Hey Algebra 1, this is a video that is going to go over solving quadratic equations by finding the square roots. So using the square roots. That would be these lovely symbols, square roots. Okay? So let's look at the first problem here on the left, number 1. So let me write some notes up here. When we have on the left side parentheses that are squared. And if you look at our problem for number 1, you see this square here. If there's a square, and then on the other side, you have a number, like 25 here. Yeah, let's say it's, I don't know, x minus 2. Not even 25, let's do 49. If you have, again, the parentheses on the left, with a squared, you can take the square root of the left side and the right side, just like we did in the last section. Okay? And I'll show you what happens. So, remember, if I have squared here, this little 2, that means that I have 2x minus 2. So I have 1 x minus 2 and times another x minus 2. And what happens is when you square root, that eliminates or takes away one of the x minus 2's. And it does the same thing to this 49, but in a different way. Remember, 49 is 7 times 7. And when you take the square root of that number, it takes away a 7. And that's why we're left with x minus 2 equals 7, but then don't forget plus and minus. So let's do that on this next problem we're going to do here. So again, take the square root of the left, square root of the right, and when you do that, I'm left with x minus 3, because it basically cancels out the parentheses when you have it squared there, equals 5. But again, don't forget that there is a plus and a minus. Okay, now we want an answer that says x equals, but right now it says x minus 3, so that means we need to get rid of this 3 by adding it to both sides. And that cancels out that 3. And then we're going to end up with 2 answers. Why? Because we have a plus 5 and a negative 5 that we need to add to 3. So the first answer is going to be the positive 5 plus 3, which is 8, comma, and the second answer would be negative 5 plus 3, which is negative 2. Okay, let's look at number 3. Now, number 3 is just like the first one, but instead of a plus here, we have a minus. But the steps are still the same. Square root the first, square root the right side, the left side and the right side. Then you end up with x minus 3 on the left. The parentheses and the square go away. And the square root of 49 is 7. But then don't forget, it's plus and minus 7. Then we need to add 3 to both sides to get rid of the 3. And then it's positive 7 plus 3, which is makes our first answer 10. And then negative 7 plus 3, which is negative 4. And that's our second answer. Okay? Zoom out a little bit. Go here. Number 7. Okay, now number 7, we're going to do the same steps. Again, square root the left, square root the right. And then we end up with x plus 9. On the left, and then the square root of 20. What is the square root of 20? Well, let's use my online calculator here to figure that out. Okay, so square root of 20, parentheses around that, equals 4.4721 blah 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 blah. Some long decimal number. Well, I don't want decimals in my answer. So if you end up with decimals, then just leave it inside the square root, and it'll just be square root of 20. But then again, don't forget the plus and minus. And again, do the same thing. We need to get rid of this 9, or the number over here on the left side. Subtract it, because it's plus. Subtract from both sides. And your first answer is going to say positive square root of 20 minus 9. And the second answer will be negative square root of 20 minus 9. And that's how you write your answer. Okay? So that's if when you take the square root and it doesn't give you an answer, or it doesn't give you a whole number. Okay, now how about number 11? Okay, let's take the square root of this side, square root of the left side. Let's do square root of negative 64 on the calculator. So let's see. Where's our negative? Negative, oh sorry, 64, make it negative. Oh, actually, sorry. Square root of negative 64. 8i. What is I? Well, let's call that an imaginary number. So that means we're not going to have, if it come up with an imaginary number, you're not going to have the right answer. So let's use actually a regular calculator. Let's go back here. Use just the regular calculator and see what happens when I do negative 64. Negative 64 equals error. So most of you guys, when you put in your calculator, it's going to say error. My scientific calculator says I. And that's because it's not a real solution. Okay? There is a solution, but it's not a real one. And we're not doing imaginary solutions. So what you would say is no real solution here. Because if you take the square root and you get an error, then that means there's no real solution. And the reason that is because if you have a negative, then you'll end up with no real solution. So anytime you see the negative, you know right away, no real solution. Okay, number 13. Okay, number 13, square root of both sides. Oh, but wait a minute. I've got a 5 here. Oh, that 5 is causing trouble. So actually, I can't do that. I need to get rid of that 5. Because in all the other problems, all I had was just parentheses, squared, and then like x plus or minus a number. But here, I have a 5 on the outside. So if that's the case, I need to get rid of the 5. And by dividing, because it's 5 times, or multiplied times this, so that means I need to do the opposite, which is divide. Divide by 5. Those 5's cancel out. And then I have x, parentheses, x minus 3 squared, equals 25 divided by 5, which is 5. And then do the steps as before. Square root of the left, square root of the right. And I'll have x minus 3 equals, square root of 5 gives us a decimal number, so we'll just leave it in the square root. And don't forget, plus and minus square root of 5. Then we'll add 3 to both sides. I'm going to choose a different color here. Add 3 here and on the right side. And then we can get our answer. X is equal to positive square root of 5 plus 3. And our next answer is negative square root of 5 plus 3. Okay? One more. Okay, now this one is kind of like the next level. Okay, so again, we only want parentheses and a squared on the left side. But now we have times 3 and minus 7. So then we got to do 2 extra steps here. So here I want to add the 7 to get rid of it. So let's add 7 to both sides. Now I end up with 3 times x plus 1 squared equals 20 plus 7, 27. And then I want to get rid of the 3, and we do just like we did in the last problem, divide the 3. That cancels out those 3's. And now on the left side, we'll have x plus 1 squared equals 27 divided by 3, which is 9. And now we can solve using the square roots. Square root here, square root there. So now x plus 1 on the left, and the square root of 9 is 3. And don't forget that when we square root, we have plus and minus. And then we want x by itself, so we subtract 1 from this side to get rid of it, because it's plus 1. And then we do it to the other side as well. And now x equals positive 3 minus 1, which is 2, and negative 3 minus 1, which is negative 4. And there we go. Okay, I hope you find these videos helpful, and there will be another one for the next section.